All right, let's just dive right into this recipe. So first you're gonna add 3 tablespoons of butter to a pot. You wanna have at least a 3-quart stock pot. Then we're gonna add some carrots, celery, thyme, onion, and a little bit of minced garlic as well. So you wanna do about 3 carrots, 2 stalks of celery, 1 small onion, and 1 clove of garlic. And of course, in order to make this recipe, I realized I didn't have any onions on hand, so I'm using some dried minced onion, which is not ideal, but it'll work in a pinch. Of course, you still get some pretty good flavor from it. So get that all in your pot and then stir it all around your melted butter. And we're gonna let this cook for a few minutes until your onions are translucent and the other veggies are a little bit soft. Now to that, we're gonna add 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour, or honestly, whatever flour you have on hand will probably work just fine. This is what's gonna make our soup thick. So we stir the veggies around so they all get kind of a nice coating here and cook them for about a minute. And then to that, we are gonna be adding 3 cups of chicken broth, or you could use a veggie broth, that's fine too. You could definitely make a veggie dumpling soup, that's absolutely fine. And you wanna add this just a little bit at a time, stirring as you go so that it basically gets absorbed by that flour on the veggies as you go. You don't wanna just splash it all in there. Nice and gradual is gonna give you a really nice thick soup base. Now, if this is thicker than you like it to be after you make this, just reduce the amount of flour you put on earlier in the recipe, or just take it out entirely. I personally like the thickness of this soup with about 1/4 cup of flour, but you can kind of play around with that if you want to. Now to that, we're gonna bring it up to a boil and then kind of reduce to a simmer. And now is where you're gonna add your meat. So in this instance, I'm actually using raw chicken as opposed to cooked turkey. But you certainly at this point, if you have leftover turkey or chicken or something from a meal, you can put that in. You want about 3 cups worth, or here with raw chicken, I am using a little over a pound. And I know it seems kind of sketchy to put just raw chicken right in there with all your veggies and stuff, but I promise this is gonna cook long enough that it is gonna be just fine to eat. So get that chicken in there, give it a stir, and now this is going to be brought back up to a boil, reduced to a simmer, and then we're just gonna let this kind of do its thing on the stove top while we go and make the best dumplings you've probably ever had in your life. That's presumptuous of me, but they're, gosh, they're really good dumplings. So for these dumplings, we need 1 cup of flour. Again, an all-purpose is a good option here. To that, we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Of course, my measuring spoons are dirty, so I have to double up here with my, my half teaspoon. And then to that, we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of coarse salt. I just use a kosher salt for this. Then to that, we are gonna add 2 tablespoons of fresh parsley, or this is parsley that I dried down from the garden. Now, usually when you're using fresh to dry, you always use less dry than you do fresh, but I find with parsley, I just kind of keep it a 1-to-1 ratio for most recipes, and I find that that's pretty good. And pick out any stems you have left from when you were lazy about drying it. Next, you're gonna put in 2 tablespoons of nice cold butter. It does not have to be frozen, but preferably not room temperature. Pull it out of the fridge. This little hunk works best if you break it into smaller pieces first, but I just threw the whole blob in there and I'm still making it work just fine. So I like to use a fork. I'm not a big fan of pastry cutters. I find forks do it better. So just kind of bust it up so you have kind of a coarse texture there. Then you're gonna add to that a 1/2 cup of whole milk, and we're gonna just mix this until it's all just kind of barely incorporated. You don't wanna see any like big dry clumps of flour or anything, but you don't want it to be silky, smooth, like cake batter or anything. You want it to be still kind of lumpy. And so the dough is gonna be a little wet, not super sticky, but a little bit wet, but holds its shape really well here. So it's a pretty stiff dough, all things considered. From there, we're gonna put it over in our pot, which has been simmering away. Our chicken is good and cooked now. You can scoop up nice big healthy spoonfuls and plop it on into your pot. Now, you gotta remember these things are gonna pretty much double in size. I like a big hefty dumpling, but if you like smaller dumplings, you could certainly do a ton of little ones. And you're just gonna continue to do that until you have filled the entire top of your pot. And this pot is gonna be basically 1 giant dumpling when it's done, which is fantastic. So just keep scooping it up, plopping it in. There you can see it's pretty much covering the top. And we are gonna cover the whole pot with a lid and let it just simmer for 12 minutes. And after 12 minutes, we take the lid off and voila, beautiful, delicious dumplings. These things are so buttery, you guys, for having only 2 tablespoons of butter in them. You can change up the herbs if you want to. You can change up other veggies in the soup if you want to. It's just absolutely delicious. So I hope you enjoy, and this is a great way to use up some of those leftovers you might have, and it'll warm me up this holiday season.